face.
Tiger face. Here.
Think about the paycheck, guys.
Actually, I think.
All right, here we are. Well, no, it's not even this one. Is it this one? It's this one. That's the button. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mack Flash Five. My name is François, and this is the gang. We're on, and it is the Mack Flash Five. Every week we get together. We discuss the top 5 movies of a given category. This week, top 5. I told you guys I didn't want to swear too much tonight, so I'm going to say we're going to call it what? Mind-bending. Top 5 mind-bending movies. I left it very vague when I gave that topic last time because I wanted to see where people would take it, and definitely led to a lot of conversation as to what mind-bending might actually mean and what movies counted. So I can't wait to see what you guys picked. We're going to get it started right away with the boys over here. We got Matthew lined up first with number 5 top bending movies.
Continuing a small trend with legal dramas. I mentioned JFK last week, and today I'm going to keep it going. It's not so much of a mind-bending movie, but I really love the ending. Now, my number 5 is Presumed Innocent. Anybody seen that?
Heard of it.
Heard of it?
No,
Nobody
don't
seen
know
it?
it.
Harrison Ford plays a prosecutor.
Yeah.
And he's accused of murdering another prosecutor who he's had an affair with. And all of the evidence, most of the evidence points right to him. And as the trial goes on, his lawyer, played by Raul Julia, in an amazing performance, gets the case broken down and pretty much dismissed. So Ford goes free, he goes home, and when the next thing you see while he's at home, he's fixing a fence. And what he does at the end of the movie is he reaches down into a toolbox and he pulls out the murder weapon. So it's a hammer type thing. It's got blood and hair from the victim all over it. So that with that scene and the music telling you, it almost seems like the movie is telling you he did it. He got away with murder, and now he's going to live the rest of his life. He takes it down to the basement, washes it off. The camera pulls out almost like the credits are about to happen, and his wife is down there. She sees what he has in his hand, and then she confesses it was her who killed the woman. Yeah. we probably, yeah, that's the thing.
Spoilers.
That was one thing I forgot to mention. Disclaimer I'm sure for many movies on our list, anybody watching, spoiler alert.
I'm not going to watch it now.
Well, I was maybe going to. I had the thought of it, but
it's got amazing cast. His wife is Bonnie Bedelia from Die Hard, John McClane's wife.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I knew that'd catch your attention.
Holly Gennaro.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Okay, Presumed Innocent.
Presumed Innocent.
Okay, perfect. That's your top 5.
Now, as we know, actually Innocence.
Yeah.
That's the sequel. I think that was the sequel title.
Oh my god, that's great. Well, that being said, Scott, take it away with your number 5.
Okay, so I thought this is mind bending. So what I wanted to do, and I'm going to start by saying my first caveat, and like I told AB off camera, was my 5 movies in the honorable mentions had to be movies that somewhere at some point during the film I had to go, what is going on? What is happening in this movie? What is real? What's not? Where are we? What's the story? What's happening? And it had to be a movie I had to leave the theater thinking about. So my original number 5 was David Fincher's Seven. Then I thought, I don't really think that's mind bending. It's just a straight crime movie with a twist ending. So I took it off the list. I replaced it with another Fincher movie, Gone Girl. And then I was like, you know what? I don't think that movie's a mind-bending movie. So I scrapped it, replaced it with a third Fincher film, 1997's The Game.
Nice.
So my number 5
Lovely
is
game.
a very underrated classic David Fincher directed, and it's kind of forgotten. It's sandwiched between Seven and Fight Club. And what The Game is, it's 2 brothers, and it's Sean Penn plays like the party boy brother for his older, uptight, but rigid, by the numbers, everything, no fun, everything's black and white, financial exec Michael Douglas brother. And in it, and after I just watched it recently, I had a conversation with my dad about it, and he loves that movie, and he called it the ultimate prank film. And what that movie is as a birthday gift, the younger brother gets the older brother, Michael Douglas, tickets to the game. And what it ultimately is, and as you find out in the movie, it puts him in this driver's seat of this almost experience where you don't know what's real and what's not, and who's real and who's an actor's and this. And it's a very almost serious done Total Recall, where all of a sudden his life is this shoot 'em up kind of like suspenseful CIA spy thriller. But ultimately, it's to the point of Michael Douglas being stripped down and broken down. So by the end of the movie, he can be rebuilt as somebody who can experience life much like his brother or any other normal person of civilization. Again, that's a movie where I will watch and I rewatched and go, what is going on? What is happening? Who do you trust? Who do you believe? At the end, there's about twist at the end. And once you finally get to the main thing, you can look at it and go, okay, I understand it all, and what a message it was. So my number 5, 1997's David Fincher directed The Game.
You're not going to tell us what. You're not going to tell us what happens at the end. I thought we were giving spoilers. Spoilers.
I don't know. He shoots Penn, then he kills himself. Then he didn't kill himself, and there was a balloon.
It was insane. It was
Penn's alive. He has a sick white coat. Awesome.
I saw The Game in theater.
Awesome.
I think I saw it with my parents, and all three of us were blown away. Like, left the theater like, what the heck, man? Yeah, loved it.
And again, it's little
really
things.
good.
The TV takes over, the company plans, and then you find out the company's not what you thought. It's an awesome cat and mouse game, and then it just, once the pieces dominoes fall, it's great.
Yeah. Really great movie. All right, AB, what you got for top five movie mind bending?
Okay, so like Scott, I also have to have a little caveat here. So when François announced the topic last week, I was so happy because I love this kind of movie. A huge chunk of my favorite movies fall into this kind of category. And so I started thinking about it, like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to pick 5? And so I'm going to change it up a little bit, and I'm going to highlight 5 directors that I think fall into this category and feature a movie from each of them.
Sure. That's great.
And so I'm going to start off with my newest film. I went back and forth between this and another director, another film, but I had to go with the film on this one because over the last, I'd say 20 years, or maybe 20 years, this one has affected me the most after watching it in the theater. And that is 2018, directed by Alex Garland. And that is Annihilation.
Oh,
Yeah, it was great.
And Alex Garland, he started writing books to start off with, and then he moved into writing movies. He originally wrote the book for The Beach and another book called Tesseract, and then he wrote 28 Days Later, as well as what am I blanking here? Anyway, so then he decided to direct, and I'm pretty sure we might be hearing about his other movie later on in somebody else's list. I don't know, but I chose Annihilation because I saw it in the theater. I walked out and I thought about it for days on end, and that's kind of what I like about these movies, is that like Scott said, you're thinking about it hours later, days later, weeks later. And I rewatched it this week, and I've been thinking about it all week. The last 20 minutes are just terrifying. Natalie Portman and Jennifer Jason Leigh and Tessa Thompson, a couple other women, lead this team of scientists and soldiers into this thing is called the Shimmer. And it's a section of area that's all got this weird zone that's has like a shimmer effect on it, and so they walk into the zone, and all the teams that have gone in before have never come back out again, so they're sent in to figure out what's going on. And then when they go in there, everything is changed. The DNA of all the plants and animals has been altered and is changing, and they have to figure out what's going on. And other people, I won't spoil what's going on, mostly because I still don't even know. Actually, after 20 minutes, I'm like, I have no idea. And so I like that. I like that there's open to interpretations. You can interpret the film as you want. I think most of the films that I'm going to talk about fall under that you can have your own interpretation, and that's great.
That's what I think is my favorite thing, because you talk about automatic replay value at this point, because you're like, well, I'm not just watching it for the fact of watching it because I've seen it so many times, but it's like every time I find something new, or there's a new,
right.
you know, or oh yeah, I always forget about this part. I love those movies where you go, oh man, I forgot about this part. That means that movie's so good. It has so many intense moments that, you know, it keeps you interested time and time after again. So I love that. What was the name of that?
That is Annihilation.
Annihilation.
It's on Netflix, actually, if you wanted it. It was in the theater for like a week. I saw it twice in the theater. It was in the theater for a week, and then it went straight to Netflix. So
wow. Okay, Annihilation.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Gonna have to check that one out. Mike, what do you got? It's your number 5 movie.
This was probably the hardest list of the lists we've done. I wound up watching just a boatload of movies this week, and most of them didn't make the list. It was like watching them to eliminate them, or watching them to see if they potentially no, not weird enough. Or so I had this internal struggle of what goes on my list, things that were just the weirdest things in the world, and I just like, what the hell was that? Or things that I enjoyed still, but were weird to some people, or like I showed them to somebody and they were like, you like that movie? Those kinds of things, you know? So I kind of went with the latter, ones that I love rewatching and are, you know, but are strange. So, and there was several, when Andrew was talking about directors, there are several directors that have done more than one of these, obviously. And I was wondering, like, do I put the obvious, or, you know, but a lot of times it wasn't the obvious for me. So in this case, number 5, this one just made my list. People probably would peg me putting the other one by this director at number 1, but it didn't make my list at all. So number 5 for me is Eyes Wide Shut, 1999 by Kubrick. I obviously wanted to put Clockwork Orange on the list. It's probably one of my favorite movies, but I'm saving that for a list somewhere down the road. I didn't want to burn it on this. And
yes, that's a good move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eyes Wide Shut is, in my opinion, weirder, because it's like, when you really look at it, it boils down to nothing really happens in the movie. Like, things happen, but nothing really happens. Like, the whole plot point of the movie involves his wife telling him something that she sort of dreamed about or had a daydream about, and he kind of reacts to it, he being Tom Cruise, wife being Kidman, which is already weird enough because it's them and they're not together, and you're watching their marriage sort of fall apart in the film, but not really. And he goes to some weird, creepy things with people with masks, and you don't know what that really is. And then all of a sudden it connects to his regular life. And there's just a lot of moments of like, what is happening? And they don't really explain them. And then you've got the classic sort of monotonous walking down the street, just single plucks on the piano music kind of thing. Everything's silent, and it's just sort of the notes go faster and faster as he's being followed by someone. And there's just a lot of that sort of like conspiracy feel to it. And so for me, that one gets it because it's just kind of like, what did I watch? Right? And there's no real explanation. And it's probably got my favorite ending of any movie. Last word of the entire film. Anyone remember it?
Yeah.
Fuck.
There it is.
Yeah. That's number 5 for me.
Wow. Yeah. Eyes Wide Shut. Never seen it. You know, I've seen the memes. I've seen the references. I've asked the questions at trivia, but I've not actually.
There it is.
When I reread 99, the best movie year ever, there's like a third of that, it feels like, it's devoted to Eyes Wide Shut, and like the filming of it, and like so many like behind the scenes subplots I fell on. Like, we'll talk okay, like a weird Kubrick had, like, they're at the toy store at the end, and there's stuff that happens after the movie's done, and I remember watching all that. So I rewatched it after. It's just that's a load. It's super weird movie that took like 3 years to film. That's an intense film.
It's beautifully done. I mean, his movies all are like, but it's just gorgeous to watch, right? So,
wow.
It's set during Christmas for anyone who needs another one of those to a Christmas movie to toss in.
To add to that playlist, of course, we always look for those right after Die Hard. Eyes Wide Shut
is not the only thing that comes to mind in that movie. Lots of masked people.
Lots of masked people.
But you know what? Going back to that, Scott, the funny thing is, of course, other people get it on, but the funny thing about that is he doesn't really do anything in that film, nor does his wife. But the whole thing is sort of based around that concept of, well, what if she did this? Well, maybe I'm going to do this. and neither of them do anything. So it's like a really weird, like, what? Just, but
Yeah.
Game of what ifs at that point. Just a
Yeah.
game of what ifs. That's interesting. Well, it brings it up to me in my number 5, and for many reasons right now in this circle, I'm regretting being last again. But at the same time, it's okay. I know my place. I know what's going on. No, I have very similar things to say. I love what AB said, where as I was going through, I realized I'm like, well, I mean, I could just pick 5 movies by this one director and we're done. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to pick, when I come up with multiple directors, I'm going to pick the one movie that, I like the most. And then by I was like, when I looked at it and I had to eliminate, as you guys were saying, I basically looked at this. You give me the choice. Do you want to watch this or this? Which one am I going to pick, right? Is it right now? Am I going to pick this or that? Because it all depends on the mood you're in and what you're doing at the time. So again, so that's one aspect. And then I'm going to also echo some of the stuff that Scott said, because my number 5 is also The Game. And there you have it.
Cool.
Awesome.
There you have it. Yeah. So The Game, I also really liked it. It's a great game. It's one of the first movies I think I saw that really took me on that ride, where the entire time I was pretty much like, okay, no, I got this figured out. oh, wait, no. Okay, wait. Now I've got it figured out. Okay, hold on. He's in a box in the desert in Mexico. It's still something is going to happen. And then, so it kept you guessing the entire time. And as Scott said, all the way, the entire time. And so that's kind of the definition of this whole shebang. So there you go. To me as well, The Game by Fincher. So there you go.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, really good one. Let's move on to number 4 now. It gets more and more exciting as we move along, doesn't it?
Indeed.
Matthew, what do you got for number 4 in these mind-bending movies?
My number 4 is more of a classic description of a mind-bending movie. My number 4 is going to be The Matrix.
Yeah, it had to be.
It's action-packed, and once you discover what the Matrix is, you get to bend the rules of the Matrix, and you have all the great special effects, fighting and flying and shoot 'em up and all that stuff. But one thing that movie did for a lot of people was mess with their minds, in the sense that simulation theory really became a huge part of the discussion of that movie. It's like people left thinking that their real lives, they were in a computer simulation. They thought they were in the Matrix, and then one day, either they're going to wake up and be in the real world, or the computer is going to shut down and blink existence out of, blink everything out of existence. And you can go online and see, the jabber on about people who believe that kind of stuff. But that is really like kind of the point of, or this discussion of a mind-bending movie. That movie clearly bent enough people's minds that they almost broke.
It's true. And I think the fact that it, they used a lot of actual philosophies, that are already present in different realms of religion and of the world, and combined them to make this thing really sort of just basically structured all of these thoughts that already existed, and just aimed them like a big laser at people and said, hey, you very influenceable people, or you know what I mean? Like easily influenced people. Let's drive all of this, at you and see what happens. And you're right. People were like, wait, maybe I am a battery. Whoa. It's true.
Like, I watched Vanilla Sky today, and I want to dive down a rabbit hole of like those augmented reality films. And I driving home from work, I thought of The Matrix, and I'm like, well, I've only seen it once, and I'm like, well, that's one that I know does it well, but the idea of what's real and what's not is classic, and like Philip K. Dick style. So I do want to dive down, probably rewatch that, and maybe see what other movies I can pick from you guys, because I don't know, I kind of want to scratch that itch as far as like virtual versus reality, and
That's a lot of really cool stuff. Like, and then we get into another list that I was like thinking about today, because this is one of those that kind of like could have fit here, and maybe some of you did, but like the time loop movies. There's a whole like realm we can do in there that's just sort of like affects that a time loop movie. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Like, yeah, probably somebody. But there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot in there, and so that's another one of those like, what's real, what's not. You know, is this, you know, and how's this going to work? How's it going to work out? Because it's a whole realm. It's a realm that you're not familiar with. So it's really hard to like wrap your brain around it, which really helps. It's kind of cool. Yeah. The Matrix. I love that movie. Cool. Yeah. Scott, what you got for round number 4?
Before I begin 4, I want to ask AB, when you said for Garland, somebody was going to have their other movie on the list, were you talking about me?
Of course.
Let's do it. My number 4. I rewatched it last night.
I knew it.
2014's Ex Machina.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I am Black Mirror obsessed, and I watched that movie with Natalie last night, and I was like, there is no movie ever done cinematography-wise, plot-wise, story-wise that plays out like a Black Mirror episode. Ex Machina is a 100-minute Black Mirror episode, and it's all about a cat and mouse game. There's maybe 5 people that appear in the film, 3 of like substance, and it's a cat mouse story, and ultimately it's Oscar Isaac and Domhnall Gleeson. They play computer programmers, and it's an AI, and they're doing Turing tests, and then you realize you know Domhnall Gleeson's there to test Alicia Vikander's AI robot to see what kind of personality she has, if she's close to humanity or if she's a robot, and if she can pass the regular test. And as it goes on further and further, the tests get turned on Gleeson a little bit, and now they're teaming up against Isaac, but Isaac's ahead, and it's so creepy. And one of my favorite scenes from that year, and the scene I go back to the most, you tore up her picture, I'm going to tear up the fucking dance floor. And it's a robot dance party, and it cuts to Gleason's face, and he's this. And that's the entire audience going, what is going on in this movie? What is this movie? And as the movie goes on and it chips away, and I said, because I told Natalie, and I appreciate this because I explain movies to her, because she just watches movies for what they are. But I see the dialogue, and they're having conversations about what it means and why they program sexuality into her, because she's flirting. And he's like, Domhnall Gleeson's like, why would you program her to flirt? And Oscar Isaac's playing dumb and coy. And I'm salivating at the 50-page monologues that they're both going on. And it plays out like a Hitchcock thriller with, again, a cast of predominantly 3 people. And then ultimately, once the final cards fall, everything's aligned in a story. You're just left going, what happened? What was it for? What was real? Who accomplished their mission doing what? I won't spoil this one, because this is one, if you haven't watched it, you got to watch it. But
Agreed.
Once it's done, I left the theater going, that's fantastic. And thinking about that again. So I rewatched it last night. I knew it would be on my list. I wanted to get higher, but I'm going to cap it at 4. Fantastic film, though, Ex Machina, 2014.
Yeah. I forgot about it. I forgot about that movie, which is probably why it's not on my list. Yeah, it's so good.
I knew it was going to be on your list.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it.
So good. It's so amazing. AB, bring it on, number 4.
Okay, so this is another director that literally you can pick any one of his films, and it certainly fits this category. I saw this movie also, maybe I saw it in the theater, but I don't remember. But it blew me away, and it's made on a shoestring budget. I forget how much it cost, but there's next to nothing. Is his first film, and he went on to make bigger and crazier films. And I think more of his films are crazier than this one, and could fit in this. And you guys will obviously jump to one in particular, but I like watching this more for obvious reasons than the other ones that are crazy. And that is 1998's Pi, directed by Darren Aronofsky. Yeah. And so I could have put on Requiem. I could have put on Mother is just as crazy or crazier than Requiem, but I cannot watch those on more than once. They're just brutal. But Pi, to me, it fits that bill. It's about a mathematician who is trying to find patterns in the stock market. And so he gets approached by these Wall Street people, and also he's getting calls from. He runs into this group of Orthodox Jews who try to get him to like translate the Torah, because I guess the Torah, there's a number that you could find, and if you find the right number, 216 character number, for 216 digit number, you can find God. And so they're trying to get him to find this number, and so he slowly starts losing his mind over the course of this film, and you start to wonder if all these things are actually happening to him, if he's actually losing it. He has like some kind of disorder that he got from the sun, from staring at the sun. On paper, this movie does not sound great. Like, if you're talking about, like, I am definitely not a math guy at all, but when you watch it, it's super intense, super crazy. He starts having mutations on him, and it's kind of a running theme that I didn't really realize until afterwards, that my 5 movies have. There's like a thing where people mutate, and so like he gets this thing on his head that starts happening, and so he goes to see his one of his mentors and plays games with him, and this guy also tried to find these patterns and these numbers, and he had a stroke. It's actually Salamanca from Breaking Bad, the guy in the wheelchair, and that dude. And so he had a stroke, and so he quit doing it, and so then he ends up getting to try again to get it in, and then he has another stroke and dies because it's so crazy. But like, spoiler, but it's intense. It's an intense movie about math, which doesn't sound great, but it is pretty amazing.
I've seen it. I've seen this movie. For all the other times where you guys bring up movies that I shouldn't have seen, and I haven't seen them, I want to make sure that I make a point of saying that I have seen this movie. It's not very good. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, wow. I'm like, okay.
Anytime you Google, it's always there.
I mean, I don't know if you're being serious or not, but I will not put it at the top of his films. It's not. I
won't either. I won't either. But it's for rewatchability for me over the other ones. I can't rewatch Requiem. I can't rewatch Mother. I just can't do it. Those are brutal.
I haven't seen Mother. I love Requiem, and I watched Pi because I had seen. It's one of those things where, well, this movie's great. What else? And then there was like Pi, and then I watched Pi, and I was like, all right, cool.
And like people bag on the fountain. People bag on the fountain. The fountain is beautiful, and like the music, the fountain is incredible.
With Hugh Jackman,
the score of the fountain too.
Yeah, it's the same guy. Clint Mansell does all of them.
Yeah,
cool. All right, number 4, moving down to Mike. What do you got?
Okay, so I'll describe this one as beautifully mind-bending in my opinion. Again, another one by a director that most likely will be on someone's list, or maybe not. I think we talked about this. So the obvious choice would be to put Eternal Sunshine on here by Michel Gondry, but we talked about that earlier off camera, sort of that's more of a love story than a mind-bender. But for me, if I could, I wouldn't even put a film. I'd put his new show, Kidding, on the list, because the whole thing, that whole show blows my mind. But everything with Gondry is artistic. So the film I'm putting on is 2006's The Science of Sleep, which is just gorgeous. And what's interesting about it is it's this kind of, I think Scott alluded to sort of some of this in some of his films, the whole dreams versus reality kind of scenario. And in this case, the main character mixes up his dreams with reality and even a little bit of memories. And it's the way it's done is really cool because he's sort of filming his own show called Stefan TV. And in true Gondry fashion, everything's cardboard and cellophane and all these kind of cool things. But it starts to bleed into his real life. And then the thing with that is you don't, as the viewer, start to realize, wait, is this really happening? Is that in his dream? And what occurs to the main character is he meets someone named Stephanie across the hall from his apartment, and he sort of begins to fall in love, but his mixed perception of reality and dreams affects that, which really essentially affects his ability to live beautifully, tragic. And what's really cool about the film is it's also a mix of English, French, and Spanish. So throughout the film, you go from English dialogue to subtitles in French or Spanish, and even the characters go between and they say things like, "Oh, no, say I can't understand that in French. You need to say that in this." And so you even as a viewer are kind of like sort of thrown for a loop with the languages they're using. But I don't know. There were parts where I was like, "Wait, what's happening?" But in the end, you can figure it out. But it's just one of those ones where I go back to it and I go, "This is just so well done that I can't pass up on it." Like he makes, little machines like a 1 second time machine where you press the button and it brings you back a second or forward a second, and it just the way he blends that into the film, and it's just I don't know, it's gorgeous. So I love that movie.
I have never even heard of that. That's wild.
It's a solid flick for sure.
A Science Asleep. Wow.
I'm gonna put that in the same category as the last movie. Also have seen that movie. I saw The Science of Sleep because of Eternal Sunshine, which I did not enjoy when I watched it.
Do you like it more than Pi?
Wait, you didn't enjoy Eternal Sunshine?
I don't know. No, I don't think I'd enjoy. I don't think I'd enjoy it.
That's a different
time.
thing.
Yeah.
You don't like Eternal Sunshine?
No, I don't. I'll have to watch it again. I don't think I liked it. No, I did not like it the time I saw it.
Sad.
I may not have been ready for it.
Sad.
Man,
Yes.
I'm still mad Jim Carrey didn't get an Oscar nom.
It could have been that I wasn't ready for it. You know, when you see a movie, like I didn't think Anchorman was funny the first time. I didn't think Zoolander was funny the first time. But then, as they go, you watch them and then you go, what the fuck was wrong with me? You know what I mean? Like, so same thing with like Eternal Sunshine. I was just like, I get it. It's fine. I'll never watch it again. Then I watched Science of Sleep,
I
and
find that insane.
Yeah, and then I watched Science of Sleep, and I was like, "What the
that's
hell?"
Even weirder. Yeah, because it's even weirder than Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That's
the
fact
day
that you went to that one after is beyond me.
That's the day. That's the day I literally scratched the name Michael Gondry off the list. Like the moment it's like, "Bye, Michael Gondry," I was like, "Well, goodbye, movie."
Hold on. This is a SpongeBob meme. All right, I'm gonna head out.
Best music video director of all time, right?
Agreed.
Foo Fighters,
For sure.
Yep.
Bjork, like
Yep.
So stick to that.
100%. Yeah. So yeah. Oh my man. So stick to
Wow,
that.
I am dying over here.
Yeah.
I'm dying inside. All right, move on quickly before I die.
I think this is the first time we've ever had like a big disagreement about movies, but this is what it's about. It's about
Get
being
ready,
honest, right? Yeah.
Oh no. Oh.
Be ready. Get ready. All right, let's take a look. We're at number 4. It's up to me. Mine is definitely really weird. I looked for it. I own it, and I couldn't find it. But I mean, it doesn't mean I won't watch it again. I gotta say, man, my top 5. I made this. I'm looking at it now. It's out of whack, but I'm gonna keep it in order anyway. But this is really good. I remember this is one of those movies that falls under the category of the first time I watched it, I pretty much didn't get most of it. You know, I understood some of it and I was like, okay, sure. But what really, because I think it was one of the first ever mind-bending movies I've ever seen. It has a really cool concept. And it's funny that I thought of it for this list because I just heard about it while watching a video about Jordan Peele. It was Jordan Peele talking about Get Out, and they were talking about movies or theories about Get Out and how it might be a sequel to the movie I'm about to say, because it involves people inhabiting other people's bodies, and that would be Being John Malkovich.
Wow.
Being John Malkovich, being about like he's able to go into actual John Malkovich's body and operate it around and stuff, and the entire stories, from the 13th and a half floor to the entire premise to the whole John Malkovich. But like, to me, I think that's one of the first times I ever saw like a movie being so meta that they were like, we are going to have John Malkovich play John Malkovich.
Malkovich.
Kind of a name in '99, by the way. He wasn't that's the funny thing. Like, he was like a B-level guy.
Right.
Like, he wasn't, he's
Malkovich,
definitely bigger now, but like at that time he was like, he did Con Air.
Con Air
like,
Malkovich.
some weird indie movies, but like, it was a choice.
Yeah, and it was just a weird movie, and the concept of him being a puppeteer and puppeteering a real person, and then being more interesting as the shell than the inside, and the whole obvious lesson to be learned. But overall, I think being John Malkovich, great mind-bending movie for especially if it's gonna be one of your first mind-bending movies.
Yeah,
it's gonna be great.
Thank you for putting that on the list because I couldn't fit it on mine. So I was trying.
I'm glad I made it.
I got to rewatch too. I only saw it the one time, and I remember bits. Like I remember Cameron Diaz being wildly insane in that.
And
then it spits him out on like the Jersey Turnpike. So I gotta rewatch that movie. I do not remember anything about that movie.
So
Catherine Keener.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Always. Fun fact: written by Charlie Kaufman, who wrote Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
So Kaufman, one of my favorites. One of my favorites, and just gonna say it like adaptation, definitely came to mind in a category. But that's like again, like you said, I'm not gonna burn it on this category. Kaufman, that adaptation can be put in all sorts of different categories, and I'm gonna keep it for that because it's like. But Kaufman, definitely a genius and stuff. All right, I've taken up more of my time than necessary. Matthew, let's bring it on to number 3. Top bind mending movies.
It's working. It's working.
My number 3 comes from a director who could have any one of his movies, except for maybe a certain trilogy, put on this list. Christopher Nolan. I have my number 3 is The Prestige.
Nice.
See, didn't think it was mind bending enough. Okay, let's argue about this.
Let him talk first.
Well, the first point I want to bring up is that the movie is about two people who want to bend each other's minds. They're magicians, of course, and entertainers, but they're rivals. And the movie is also about like how far a rivalry can go. You can talk about friendly rivalries. This isn't that. These guys want to screw each other over and steal each other's tricks and mess with each other as much as they can. It's also about the lengths people take to keep a secret. Like I said, they're entertainers and they really dedicate themselves to the role of being magicians. These are actors. Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale are actors. They're playing actors who take what they do to heart. The end of the movie is, of course, the really mind-bending part near the end of the movie, and moving towards. Whoops! I don't want to say I saw what was going to happen before it happened because that'd be arrogant, but I had like half an idea.
Talking about Bale's twist?
Bale's twist was obvious. I thought was obvious. And then at the end, you see how Hugh Jackman does his tricks. And that's the one where you're really like, whoa.
And I think that was kind of the point of the movie where they were trying to make you go like, and you're like, whoa. And then they go, but and you're like, wow, what's going on, right? It's so great. I love that movie.
Man, any movie that's got David Bowie playing Tesla.
Any movie.
It's sick when he walks through the electricity. That's pretty bad.
I'm like, Christopher Nolan, I love you forever for putting David Bowie as Tesla.
It's such a good movie. Yeah, great movie. And I mean, guys, check it out. A cool movie about magic. Because magic is not, it's above ventriloquism, and then right below that is mimes. It's like, you know what I mean? And so magic is not a very highly respected or not respected, but like it's not considered cool. It is more now with, the Chris Angels and the whatnot, but it's still and the
Joe Bluths and the Tony Wonders.
The Joe Bluths and the Tony Wonders. It's a very nerdy
magic
entertainment.
Tricks.
Yeah.
Scratch off your choice, Andrew, for top 5 magic movies for next week.
There's The Prestige and The Illusionist. That's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Burt Wonderstone.
Now you see me. Now you see me.
The Harry.
Now You See Me 1. It's sick. Franco with the cards. I like Now You See Me 1.
Oh, we're off topic.
I've seen one. I haven't seen two. Yeah, we're off topic.
All right, here we go.
Next week. No. Tune in next week.
Okay, I got 3 things to say. You guys are so funny. Saving movies? I'm going balls to the wall. My next 3 are my 3 favorite films. Like, I'm going balls to the wall, like, using my favorite movies right now. I was so mad. I thought François and Matt were both going to take 2 of my final 3, and you went with other directors. But we're going to go. My number 3, Jordan Peele, 2017's Get Out. So that by far is my number 3, and it's my number 3 favorite film ever. So I saw that movie, and there is just so much that I can rave about that film being a horror movie unto itself. But the one thing I take away from it, the social commentary. So I liked Key and Peele just fine. I saw Keanu in theaters and thought it was kind of lame. And then Jordan Peele's coming out with a horror movie, and you're like, that's cool. But then you see that it's a horror movie with loads of social commentary, and you're like, I didn't know he had this gear, and I didn't know he could do this for a debut feature film as a director, written by him. It is unbelievable. The whole thing, the whole thing, when you put into it, you're just sitting there. What is going on? What is going on with this family? What is going on with them? They're going out of their way. Odds are, if you haven't seen it, go out and see it. Odds are you've seen it. But then you find out as you chip away at what it's really about, and that's core, it's racism. But it's not really racism, because Jordan Peele's making the statement that no matter what, the whites emulate the African Americans and the blacks, and secretly they want to be them. That is an amazing statement. That's why they want to be them. They are better than them in every way. They have better eye for photography. They're better at sports. They're better. They're more charming. They're everything. And Jordan Peele's putting that on film and projecting that to the audience. And you get little things. And that's a movie where I've seen it multiple times, but you get so much more from an audio commentary from it. And as you guys know, my favorite show of all time is The West Wing. And Jordan Peele on the audio commentary said he cast Bradley Whitford solely to convey the left-wing liberalism of his former character on The West Wing, Josh Lyman. That's why Bradley Whitford's in the movie. Awesome. Check. Second things you don't even notice upon seeing the movie is what saves Chris at the end when he's strapped to the couch, literally picking cotton out of the couch to stuff his ears. Genius. It's little things like that that are layered through the film. You get the horror elements, which are fantastic. The sunken room is just unto itself a very eerie feel. You get the message that he's putting behind the film, which kept me thinking about it literally for 6 months after I had seen it. And you get the little bits of sweetness and icing and cherries on top. You get the stuff with Allison Williams when her cereal is split from the milk and it's segregated, and you're watching that and go, God damn, that is so smart and genius. And that is literally a movie that kept me guessing right through. And once you get to the end, you're just like, it clicked, but I take something from it every single time I see it after that. So I am so glad that Jordan Peele was rewarded with the Academy Award for screenplay for that film. Us was amazing. And he, like the other 2 directors next, not so much the second one, but the top director and anyone on this list are their names attached. I'll see it immediately. So he's nice. Something, no matter what he puts out, I'm going to go see it. Yeah. But my number 3, Get Out.
You guys know I'm not like the big horror guy. I don't really like horror movies. So when I heard of this and the people were categorizing it as a horror movie, I was like, I don't know. Kind of like this guy, but I don't know if I'm going to see this. And then people saw it and were like, no, François, you need to see this movie. And I saw it and I was like, oh my God, now I tell everybody about this movie. Yeah. You've got to see, like, I make sure not to call it a horror movie so that people will watch it. You know what I mean? Because it's that good.
Well, it's one of those ones where it's more terrifying than, like, most horror movies are sort of, there's a element of, oh, that could never happen. This is a true horror because it could happen. It does happen, these things, you know what I mean? Those are the scarier types of horror films, right?
Yeah.
Forget vampires and zombies. Like, this is like real life kind of stuff.
This is stuff that can happen next door, and it is most likely happening somewhere near, you know? Yeah, that's crazy. Scott, thank you so much for that. That was we're still on number 3. We still got a bunch to go. AB, what's going on at number 3?
All right, fellas, buckle up, because this is where stuff gets real weird. Back when I was in college, a buddy of mine was like, hey, you really like weird stuff. You really like horror movies. You really like science fiction. You really like industrial music. you need to watch this. And so he hands me a bootleg VHS copy of Tetsuo the Iron Man, directed by Shinya Sakamoto. And
you couldn't just pick Old Boy. You had to
Nope.
go that. You couldn't pick Old
Nope.
Boy? Okay, got it.
definitely not Old Boy.
The floor is yours.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Tetsuo the Iron Man, it was one of my first movies that I'd seen it from Japanese cinema, and I'm now super obsessed with Japanese cinema and samurai movies in general. But this movie blew my mind when I watched it in college. In it, there's two main characters. We see the opening shot. The guy is cutting his leg open, and he inserts into his leg this metal rebar, and from there it starts growing, and he starts mutating. Again, that's following my theme. It starts mutating. He starts becoming more like a metal man, and like wires and rusty screws and stuff start coming out of his body. Switch to another guy, this businessman. I think he's called in the credits Salary Man, and he's shaving, and he sees a little metal spike coming out of his cheek, and so he kind of touches it, and it explodes. And he gets freaked out, and so like he starts also mutating, and this metal starts coming out of it, bubbling. It's all practical effects, like super, like crazy gore, and like it's wild. But it's all like I said, practical effects, and he does a lot of stop motion animation throughout it, which looks incredible. It's all black and white. Yeah, it's like nothing you'll ever see in your life. There's actually 3 movies that he's done. He's done Tetsuo the Iron Man, Tetsuo the Body Hammer, and Tetsuo the Bullet Man. But man, wild stuff. So I got this guy's box set. It's got a bunch of his stuff. He's obsessed with that idea of mixing metal and technology with organics and humans, like the cyborg kind of thing, which I'm all about. I'm all about it, and it'll come up soon again.
I can relate.
Is RoboCop your number one?
Yes, mind-bending RoboCop.
Mind-bending. Yeah.
What year is that movie from, AB?
1989.
Cool.
I can relate to that movie because I also hate shaving. So
That's your takeaway?
Yeah, was that not what it was about? I'm sorry, I was eating Doritos. Tetsuo, I've heard the name before.
Tetsuo the Iron Man.
If ever it's on, I'll make sure not to change the channel. Hey, Mike, what do you got coming up at number 3?
Okay, so my number 3, once again, not probably the weirdest by this director, and actually probably quite predictable on the whole. Like when you say the trailers and the previews for it, it's actually from last year, 2019's Midsommar. By Ari Aster. Hereditary is obviously the more disturbing of the two, in my opinion, but I wasn't just going for that sort of shock factor. This was one of those ones where you knew what was going to happen. Like it's kind of like Hostel in a way, if you will. We're going away for the summer to, in a beautiful place. We're going to Sweden. What could go wrong, kind of thing. So you know what's coming. But what I love about it is sort of the shock of then what happens. Like you're waiting for these moments. You're waiting for something odd to happen to these Americans or the Londoners that got brought there, because this close-knit community from Sweden, they have this festival every 90 years, and some of the children who went abroad to study brought back some of their friends, and you're like, okay, well, we know what's happening here. We know what this festival is. I've seen Wicker Man or whatever else, and but the way they do it, like it's this horror versus beauty. Like I was watching it the whole time, just going, oh wow, that's disturbing, but I can't look away. And there's there's definitely some gross, brutal scenes with just sort of some, heads being smashed and things. And then there's just some really twisted scenes, like sort of sex-related things where you're just like, oh, that is the most uncomfortable. But I think the oddest thing about the film, and beautiful at the same time, but unsettling is the way the director has all of the members of this community sort of they're like one. So anytime something affects them, they sort of scream together, or they heavily breathe together. They sit down together for meals, and it's all synchronized. It's all this sort of like almost like body snatchers type thing, right? And the whole time, it left me wondering things like, how much of this was planned? Did they know who they were going to kill here, and how they were going to do this, and who was going to wind up being the head of the festival? Was that planned out or not, without giving too much away, right from the get-go, or did it just happen because of how these Americans acted? And so, I mean, I don't know the answers to that, but it's this kind of juxtaposition between tradition and cult behaviors, and it's just wrapping my head around it. Like it's difficult for me, but I would watch it again and again to sort of analyze it, which is why that's on my list.
That's nice. I hear people who love that movie just love that movie. Like they rave about it all the time.
The director's cut is like 3 hours long, which I've seen. There's an extra 40 minutes from what you're watching it, which is insane. But so funny story about that movie. I saw it in the theater, and there was probably about 20 people in the theater. And during that super awkward sex scene, there's like a really weird part about it, like thing, and I like snickered, like I snickered out loud, like, and like it was dead silent in the theater, right? And I just gave a little, and the entire theater erupted with laughter.
They were just waiting.
I made it okay for them to laugh at it, and it was like a funny moment. We all kind of like looked at each other, like, man, that was crazy.
Yeah. I can't believe we were all here and we all saw this together.
Yeah.
That's great. Midsummer. All right. Okay. Midsummer. Yeah. All right. So that brings it up to me for number 3. This movie is one of those movies where before, when I said mind-bending movies are the ones where if you watch it again, there's parts you forget because it bent your mind so far that you're like, oh yeah, and then this part, and I forgot about this whole angle. And I have to admit that every time I watch my number 3 movie, part of me kind of forgets how it ends. I don't know if it's just one of those things where my mind is just programmed to it, or I just like this movie so much, my brain purposefully forgets the end of the movie so that I get to enjoy it every time I watch it. But that movie is 12 Monkeys.
Yes.
That movie is just great. I'm obviously a big fan of Bruce Willis. I'm a big Brad Pitt fan. Yeah, what?
Oscar nom. Yeah, Oscar nom of that.
Yeah, and then it was Terry. That's a Terry Gilliam.
Terry Gilliam.
Right,
Yep.
Terry Gilliam. Yeah, so if I missed it. So a great combination. Every scene. The one thing about me is I wouldn't say I'm against them, but I'm not huge into slow-paced movies. And I have to say, like, 12 Monkeys is it does have a slower pace. You know, here's one part, here's the next part, and it kind of pieces it together. It speeds up towards the end, but it still grabs me every time. And I just like really, really enjoy that movie. So 12 Monkeys, that's my number 3 mind-bending movie.
That kind of jumped on and off my list for the week. And, yeah, I was really obsessed with that movie when it came out. I saw it a couple of times in the theater, and just that idea too that halfway through the movie you're like, they kind of propose it to it. Is this actually happening? Is he actually insane? And all of it is like when he's in the psychiatric hospital. Like, are all these other things just made up and not actually happening? And he's just a nut job. Like,
yeah, that's a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great. And then the flashbacks, what's that flashback all about? There's never any explanation, and you keep seeing it. And yeah, great movie. And it made it onto my list, I gotta say, last thing, just because one of those things where I was trying to keep it sort of varied, by, because you gotta say, well, yeah, this one versus this one. I mean, they're different movies and I enjoy them both, but okay, in the impact of trying to keep a different director for example, this movie made the list for sure. Yeah, really good one.
Nice.
All right, Matthew, let's take it to number 2. We're on the final stretch, gentlemen. Number 2 top mind-bending movies.
Right. My list has been pretty tame in comparison to the rest of yours. And that's really just because mind-bending movies, as we're defining them, aren't my genre that I go to. I mean, there are Fincher movies I love. There are Christopher Nolan movies I love. And there's another director I'm blanking on who makes them, or Terry Gilliam, David Lynch, 1 or 2 movies of his. But I've seen them, but don't enjoy them, or I haven't seen them at all. My number 2 is not a mind-bending movie, I mean, in the traditional sense at all. But I'm just going to talk about the mind-bending aspect of that movie, and that's Back to the Future is my number 2.
I mean, hey, let's do it. I mean, if you're gonna bring it Back to the Future, I'm not gonna get into it. You know what? Hold on. Let me just give you full screen on that one.
Okay. Now it's really about the end of the movie. Well, we'll go to the beginning. Marty's family, before he goes to 1955, is lower middle class. His father's a coward. His mom's an alcoholic. It's a life this kid doesn't want. He goes back in time, gets his, messes up his parents' meeting, gets them back together. When he comes back to 1985, he gets to the house. He wakes up in his bed. He thinks it's all a dream. He walks through the house and he realizes it's a nicer house. His siblings aren't bickering. They've got good jobs. His parents walk in. His father's far more confident. His mom looks much healthier. And that will bring me to the point that Marty has no memory of the life of this family. So Marty McFly has pretty much stolen the identity of another Marty McFly and is living his life.
Yes.
Like he has no memory of like childhood or anything.
No.
Which is
all of his memories are of the ones of the parents, he left behind.
Yeah. And that can make him sound like the victim. But
yeah. So at the end of Back to the Future, he comes, when he comes right back to 1985, he runs to what is now the Lone Pine Mall, and he sees another Marty McFly go time travel, presumably to 1955 to start off his own adventure. That's the Marty whose life he has stolen. That kid grew up, more privileged, a nicer house, far more confident family. He's at the very end of the movie, he's driving around in his truck. That Marty's got, that nice 4x4, and our Marty McFly is walking in. It's like, oh, I got this. This is great.
Don't forget, Michael J. Fox also stole the role.
Right.
So he gets the role and the characters. Oh, I got you.
One final thing. The Marty McFly he sees going to 1985 or 1955. He has to come back, but he'll come back to something different himself.
That's right.
Because that Marty grew up hearing stories told by his parents about how they were brought together by some guy named Calvin Klein.
Oh, wow. I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Because our Marty, he just hears the story. Mother, the grandpa hit him with a car. Mom felt sorry for him, and they went to the dance. This Marty has a whole new, string to that story. So he's going to 1955 to as he goes through it, he'll realize, oh, I'm that Calvin Klein my parents were talking about. It's a completely different adventure that we won't see. And that for my number 2 is the mind-bending aspect of Back to the Future.
The one thing
my mind just got bended.
Yeah, I'm bent.
When he says name him Marty, and they're like, Marty, what a nice name, that they named their second son. So imagine he came back and he was Dave, and his older brother was now Marty because they liked the name so much. That's something you don't think about. But I will say,
I never
thought of that? Oh, the one time travel movie I love that acknowledges what you're saying is Butterfly Effect. When he comes back and unlocks the memories. Yeah. I saw a movie in theaters. I was like 16. I'm like, that is so brilliant. And every time he does it, he's developing like intense, severe contusions and brain cancer.
Yeah, it's breaking.
I was like,
brain.
He's unlocking everything. And I'm like, because you never see that. And you just take time travel for what it is and you come back. But Butterfly Effect was like, F that. We're going to acknowledge memories. And I've always given Butterfly Effect like a level up for doing that and making it a plot point.
Definitely came back. That movie, Butterfly Effect, kept coming back on the list. Like maybe. But dude, honestly, and there's like We could do a whole episode talking about the discrepancies and effects of Back to the Future 1. Just the
let's
whole
do it.
like, yeah, because there's a lot of conundrums that take place, because just the fact that another Marty has to go back to 1955 probably would not even have happened, because being brought up the way he was brought up, the new Marty would not have hung out with Doc.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
You know what I mean?
Probably
And so
would've
they
dated
would never
Jennifer.
would have happened. Yeah.
So are we discussing mind bending or just plot holes in
Top 5 plot hole movies?
Plus,
Oh my gosh.
doesn't his girlfriend completely change from the
Yeah.
film?
And that too.
Yeah.
Christopher Glover too changes.
And he doesn't even notice. He's fine with this.
It's the tumors, brain tumors that he developed.
It's all those brain tumors from the butterfly effect.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Scott, what you got number 2, man? Matt, that was
Like I
great.
said,
That was really good.
Thank you.
I'm going pedal to the metal. So my number 2 is my number 2 favorite movie of all time. It's 2000's American Psycho. It's a movie I watch. You guys, I talk about this movie till I'm blue in the face. It's a movie that I will alternate between reading the book and going back. I'll watch that movie probably 3-4 times a year. I'll put it on if I have literally nothing to do. I love the black comedy satirical aspect of like 1980s yuppieism, the performance of Christian Bale, as well as everything else involved. Is he doing the murders? Is he a crazy sociopath who's starved for anger and bloodlust, or is he just a bored rich yuppie who wants out of his boring life and boring engagement, and he fantasizes these things? And again, it's a movie that I say you go back to and you see those little shots, and I tell everyone, those little shots when he's at the bar and he's screaming foul, profane things, he's looking at his reflection and nobody hears him. Nobody hears him when they ask what he does, and he says he's into murders and executions. They hear mergers and acquisitions. Nobody, when he drops the chainsaw and the prostitutes banging on all the doors, no one hears that. So then you're catching little things that maybe it doesn't exist. Why it doesn't exist? And now you're diving into the plot of, oh, what they're saying is 1980s yuppieism. Nobody knows anything. Everyone only cares about themselves. It's a whole thing of misplacing the names and mistaken identity. And he killed who he thought was a gentleman named Paul Allen, but Paul Allen was in France having dinner with someone, but he's been mistaken for Marcus Halberstram this entire time. So now you're like, well, shit, did he actually kill him? Did he go away? Did he fake that? Anything is... Meanwhile, set through the whole backdrop of it, there is a very black comedy jokes. There's bits and there's narration of Christian Bale's character, Patrick Bateman, when he is going to fake that Jared Leto's character is gone. He's upset and jealous that his apartment is a little nicer, and he's kind of comparing. And it dives deeper in the book, and you're just like, this is very black comedy, and it's very dark, and it's something, like I said, you think about more, because ultimately once you leave and you take into the idea of relationships, and is it surface or is there something meaningful? Am I bored? What's real? What's not? And again, you keep thinking about it as you go. And like I said, it's just like Get Out. You watch it with the auto commentary and you pick little things. And you can, Mary Harron, who directed it, did little shots with Willem Dafoe, who plays the detective. And in a sit-down scene with Willem Dafoe's character and Christian Bale's, he shot it 3 times. One that he's suspicious, one that he's unsure, and one that he's not suspicious, and she spliced those 3 scenes, so it keeps a very uneasy flow. But it's little things like that when you're watching it, you know exactly that's the suspicious scene, that's not, that's that, and it just keeps you guessing the entire time, because ultimately it's up to you to make your own decision on if Patrick Bateman was the killer. I believe he wasn't.
Wow.
I believe he was a bored yuppie by his diagrams and doodles. But again, that's what the viewer's for, and that's what the directors and the writers, Bret Easton Ellis, want us to decide. So that's Ben's my mind.
Wow. I've only seen the movie. I've only seen the movie like maybe once.
I've seen the movie
maybe twice, but like I've only taken it to the letter, of the word. I've never actually looked for more. Like you're actually bending my mind right now, because I'm like, I'm gonna watch it now, thinking that it never occurred to me. I just thought it was, here's kind of a story, and I took it to the letter of that story, but like I never looked for subtext like that maybe that's not actually happening. So I'll definitely,
I think that movie I still watch a lot. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say, I think that you can take that. I think the movie lends itself to that. That you can sit there and watch it and take it as a straight thing, or you can dive deeper in it. And I think that the book, obviously, the book delves more into it of that
Mhm.
kind of speculation on it. I was gonna say for me I mean, it's kind of the big scene in that people think about is I think about it all the time whenever I see a business card. And in the book
Business
and in the
cards.
movie,
That's
the
bone.
business card scene where he's internally freaking out, especially in the book when he like talks about his internal, he has his internal dialogue when he's looking at the buddy's card. Every time I see someone's business card, I think about that scene because I'm like,
No, and
it's
it's
like,
a good one.
again,
like
it's
wants
little
to
bits of
murder him because of his business
how.
card.
That's exactly, and that's what it is. And he sees the
Yeah,
apartment and the business cards and the
yeah,
reservations that they can't get the reservations to the restaurants, but other guys can. And again, being in like a business profession, there's little things and ideal like in yuppieism that you can appreciate and laugh and go, yes, I have business cards. So when I see that, I think of that scene too. And you're like,
yeah,
Maybe
oh my
not the
God,
yeah.
there's even a watermark. And
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Maybe
yeah.
not
So
to
it's
that
Amazing.
extent, but
like
right, you
that.
see like, oh, this guy's got now the double-sided card, and you're like, man, I got a I got
That's
single-sided over
yeah,
here.
And
so
like
good.
it's just little things as the movie goes and it gets more out of his psyche and he's seeing feed me a stray cat in the ATM and he's just going around shooting people and again it's based on the performance too carries it with like the things behind the scenes. Like I said, it's just a melting pot. It makes my second favorite movie ever. So again, there's just everything comes together in that movie and it just makes a big spark as what bends my mind.
Nice. All right, AB, what you got for number 2?
All right, so the last couple of days, these guys have been trying to guess my number one, and they keep bringing up two certain gentlemen, and these two certain gentlemen literally define this genre. Like when you talk about this kind of movie, their entire works basically are this. And so I'm going to start off with one who is a Canadian fellow. He directed this movie in 1983, and it is called Videodrome
That
by
was a good
David
watch there.
Cronenberg.
Yeah, that's okay.
It is starring James Woods and Debbie Harry from Blondie. And James Woods plays this guy who has his own small television station. His name's Max Wren, and he is trying to make it big. Is trying to find the next big thing to satiate the people, and so he's trying to find something weird and something that nobody else has. And so he runs across these television broadcasts of this show called Videodrome, and it's got like the craziest stuff you can find, like people being tortured, people being murdered, like just crazy stuff. And so he tries to find where these signals are coming from and who is responsible for these signals, because he wants to try and bring it onto his television station. And so he runs across a couple of kind of like cults, and they kind of turn him on to this thing that these television broadcasts and these videotapes are mind control things. And they start not just controlling your mind, but they also start like changing your genetics, and like people start mutating and changing. And so at one point, and this follows along the same lines with the last one, and actually both of them, where it's a lot of body horror. At one point, James Woods has this like slot in his like stomach, and this guy inserts like an organic VHS tape into his stomach so he can get the signal. It's wild. But a lot of people bag this movie now because the technology is dated. It has like television broadcasts and VHS and that kind of stuff. And it's true, but to me, like the concepts are even more so now than they ever have been, with just constant media stream that we have now, and the whole idea of people freaking out over 5G, whether that has health issues for people, whether that we're going to have health concerns. So I think this movie is just as relevant now, more relevant than it ever was, despite the technological, dated technology. Man, it's it's definitely messed up from beginning to end, and the end is pretty crazy. Also, long live the new flesh.
Has anybody seen this movie?
I haven't.
No, I think like you were talking about it because at first I've heard of it, and then you were talking about it. I think like somebody threw that on like at a party when we were like super roasted. Because I was like, I'm getting flashes of what you were saying. I was like, yes, maybe it's something about a slot, maybe in a James Wood.
It's crazy, man. And so it's so funny because like James Woods always gets typecast as a sleazebag because he basically is a sleazebag, but like he plays it so well. Like he's perfect for that role as a sleazy like TV exec guy, and plus Debbie Harry looks amazing.
Yeah, calm down. You look like you got flushed there for a second. All right, good movie.
Highly recommend Viodo. But also, like I said, David Cronenberg. You could literally insert any of his films in there. Any of his films, but Videodrome for me takes the cake for that kind of movie.
Sweet. All right, number 2. Moving on, Mike. What do you got?
Okay, this was fighting for number 1. When I heard this list, I thought this would be number 1, but it's number 2. And I don't know, maybe it's more nostalgia. If you knew me in the 90s, I was all about Canadian independent films. Anything I could find, I would just eat it up. And this fits the bill for mind-bending Canadian independent film and horror, if you will. So mine is 97 Cube, 1997 Cube.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, when that movie came out, I was like, I can't watch this enough. And it hits that sort of category someone was talking about earlier, maybe a few of us were, of if I watch it again, what changes? What's different? And the whole way they set the film up, where this one guy just jumps into a room, you don't even know what's going on, and he's just diced into little pieces, which funnily enough are like cubes. But and then you're just like, what's happening? And then all of a sudden, more people just start showing up in these rooms, and you can't figure out what's going on or why it's happening, and neither can they. So you're just one of them, basically. And you still, to this day, you don't really know what's going on. But you're trying to figure out the puzzle of this while they're trying to figure out how to escape, how to get out. At a certain point, eventually, they figure out there's number codes as they open up the doors and realize there's other rooms, and there's like these 9-digit codes. And, you're trying to solve them with them. And they have the perfect mix of characters. There's a math student, a cop, an autistic kid, a doctor, all these. And then one guy you find out helped design the outer shell. And you're trying to figure out who's, sort of like, who's the bad guy, right? As you're watching this whole thing. And solve these numbers to figure out what room is trapped and what room isn't. And at one point, it's supposedly prime numbers, and then you realize it's Cartesian coordinates. And so you're trying to figure this out as they're trying to figure it out, all the while still not knowing why they're in this damn cube in the first place, right? And at the time, you still don't really know why. And just so you get sort of settled, and then about 3/4 of the way, and you realize, holy crap, all the cubes are moving amongst themselves, right? And it's these permutations as opposed to just going from room to room on a linear plane. And so you're just like, this is crazy, right? All the while someone's psychotic and starts killing people and things.
Yeah.
And it's just, I could rewatch that over and over. And I mean, it spawned 2 sequels, not nearly as good, but for a Canadian independent film in and of itself to spawn 2 sequels, to me, puts it up there on the list. So
sure.
And it comes down to the simplicity of the idea sometimes, right? They're like, here's a very simple idea. It's like a couple of guys going like, hey, we could probably write a movie that takes place all in a cube, and we just basically do these things, and the whole movie will be filmed in this one cube. We'll just make it look like different
low
cubes.
budget.
Very low budget.
Amazing idea.
That's a great idea.
There's a movie on Netflix that's very similar right now called The Platform.
It's on my list.
And it's
food?
Yes. So it's very similar in the idea, and it's great.
Are you guys familiar with High Rise?
I am, yeah.
The book? Yeah, so it's the same thing. I saw that. Natalie watched it, and I was like, so High Rise is the war breaks out, Tom Hiddleston. And I was like, well, this looks like even darker with food, like Snowpiercer almost. Like, So
It's very similar to a lot of those.
The Raid.
Definitely check it out.
Raid.
The platform.
Yeah, but the difference being, as I understand it, because I haven't watched it, it's on my list. When I say list, I mean Netflix queue, right? And what I understand for that one, it's more like social levels for where you are on the platforms. Is that not correct?
Well, no, it's all random too. But it's the idea of the social thing comes into just the social commentary like throughout the film, right? But like everything is random. But like you have to watch it. I don't want to like ruin too much of it, but yeah, definitely check it out if you like Cube. It's a perfect double feature.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that was your number 2 was again
Cube.
I did see that, and another one of those so mind bending that like this one I won't actually go ahead and say I saw it and I hated it. No, this one I saw and I remember being thoroughly confused, thoroughly. But no, one of those like you said in the 90s you threw this is one of those you threw it on, at university parties or just hanging out. You're doing the things that we do in university. And you're like, hey, you want to see something really screwed up? Check out this movie called The Cube. So it's cool. Okay, for me, number 2 fits more into the mainstream because it's a very popular movie, and like popular in that very sense of the word, where not only is not a cult following, most people like this movie, but it is a bit of a mindfuck in the way that it's got its own sort of mind-bendy way of telling you a story is what it is, and showing you one story and then all of a sudden just turning that door around and going like, ta-da, just kidding, it was this story in the whole time. And what I'm talking about is Usual Suspects. Usual Suspects by Bryan Singer.
I watched it the other day.
Great.
I mean, you could just say it is one of those, it's just a mystery or detective, because that's the thing people were talking about before, trying to define, mind bending or the theme of the show. And I was like, let's not put limitations on it. Was there a movie that you watched and the whole time they had you thinking one thing, and at the end they turned that table and you had to rewatch pretty much the entire movie to go,
well, the thing
holy
is, none of it happened. None of that story happened. Like,
right.
You can say, like, the characters, Redfoot, like Gabrielle Mocked, or who's it, Gabrielle Byrne. It's none of that transpired the way it ended. You don't know.
That's right. It'd be great to see like the other side, the actual thing that actually happened, because it seemed like an interesting story regardless. You know what I mean? But there it was, The Usual Suspects. That's my number two mind-bending movie. And one of those things where you're like, that one over others, you know what? Simply for the fact that you can rewatch it so many times. It's got a great cast, and it's like, just, you can watch it with anyone, even someone who's like, listen, I want to watch a movie, I don't want to really think too much. You're like, well, here's a fun one that will surprise you, and still you won't have to do the work. What did that say?
It's just my note to Kevin Spacey.
Oh yes, I like Kevin Spacey as well. I gotta say, whatever, things happen, but that's verbal Kaiser Sose. You say what you say. All right, we're going down to number ones. Oh no way!
Honorable mentions.
Before we get to number 1, we do the honorable mentions. The 3 movies that did not make your list. No explanations, no reactions. Matthew, go.
Just a quick explanation. Well, no. I've got 3 movies that could easily just be on the list. I mean, because I talked about.
Yeah, we all do.
But I put on my list Back to the Future, and I've got 3 movies where you can be like, why don't you just use that one instead? So my 3: Parasite, Inception, and Joker.
Yeah.
Okay. My 3: I got 12 Monkeys, Fight Club, and Inception.
This is blowing my mind. This right now is blowing my mind. Okay,
and so I'm going to stick with my directors too, because I'm going to shout out the directors. So mine's already been mentioned once. Spike Jonze, being John Malkovich. This guy for sure. This was the one that flopped on and off my list. Yorgos Lanthimos, The Lobster, all of his stuff. Dogtooth.
The second half of that movie I hate.
And so also my man Denis Villeneuve, Prisoners.
Yeah.
Oh, Prisoners.
There was a few.
That's the
Arrival or
Hugh Jackman
yes,
kidnapping.
Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah,
I've
it's
seen
crazy.
that. I saw that by accident.
Theaters, and it
great.
How
was
did I get here? How did I get here?
Yeah, how did I get it? My
Yeah.
All right. So, no, my 3: Inception, Dark Crystal,
Yeah,
Pan's Labyrinth.
great.
Yeah, cool. Very
Yeah.
cool.
I'm not gonna lie, I switched some stuff around as you guys were talking. Here's my honorable mentions: Memento, Shutter Island, and Predestination.
Oh, Predestination's
Hawke?
crazy.
Yeah, Ethan
Yep.
Hawke.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I saw it. It's not great, but it's got that something
wild.
about it. Something about it made it to list. You know what? I even regret. There's some stuff that should have made that. Anyway, there's too many. It's too many. There's a reason I picked this category. I really like mind-bending movies that take you someplace and then just take you somewhere else, or the whole time keeps you guessing. Whether it's an Ocean's 11 or something even more far-fetched and complicated, I love that stuff. So let's see what you guys have got picked for number 1 most mind-bending movies. Oh my gosh, number 1. Here we go. I hit number 2 instead.
My number 1 is a classic in science fiction and mind-bending movies. My number 1's Planet of the Apes, 1968 Planet of the Apes.
Okay, yeah.
Now,
Great
the
call.
original mind bend.
Great. Got you.
in a certain point of view, it is, because it was co-written by Rod Sterling, who was the creator of The Twilight Zone. That's the original Mindbender in my mind. Of course, based on a book by Pierre Boulle. And the premise of the movie: Charlton Heston flies in a spacecraft from Earth, going at the speed of light, leaving Earth in the year 1972, and crash lands on a planet he thinks is light years away, and 2,000 years have passed. He tells his fellow astronauts where he believes they are, and that everyone back on Earth that you knew has been dead for 2,000 years. So let's not cry about it. He's instantly accepts where he is and what their situation is. As the movie progresses, he winds up because he loses track of his buddies in Ape City. He gets hunted down, shot in the throat, and loses the power of speech, which yes, that'd be great.
Dr. Zaius.
Troy McClure playing Charlton Heston.
Yeah, sorry, it was worth it. It was worth it.
And I love that. That's probably one of my favorite Simpsons episodes too, for maybe that reason. So going on, he has his adventure through Ape City, meets the Cornelius and Zira, who are chimpanzee scientists who want to help him. He recovers his speech capabilities and shocks the planet of the apes, because on their planet, humans can't talk. As the story goes on, he meets Dr. Zaius, who is really afraid of Charlton. His character's name is Taylor. He's really afraid of Taylor and the reason why isn't very much explained until the end of the movie. So we'll shoot to the end. Taylor and some of the apes travel to the Forbidden Zone, where they find evidence that man had lived on that planet a while back, and they had technology well enough that they could use it to, at least heal certain anomalies. He finds like fossilized dentures and eyeglasses and a heart valve, and still doesn't convince Dr. Zaius that humans were here, they were intelligent, and somehow you guys took. It's just nothing ever goes through his head other than, I'm on another planet. Humans used to live here, but they don't anymore. At the end of the movie, we reveal one of the most iconic shots and endings in film history.
Don't say it.
Don't say it. I mean, it's been, it was 1968.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. You see,
Damn
Like
you.
Heston's dead. He ain't coming for us NRA style. But you can spoil.
You spoil it. I've never
You
seen
watched
it.
the-
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Planet of the Apes?
Nah, I've never
Well,
seen it.
you've
I'll
seen-
watch. I'll watch.
you've
I've seen
seen-
every
everyone
reference.
knows.
Every reference. Every reference.
Wow.
Exactly. It's been referenced to death.
Yeah.
We see the Statue of Liberty. It's finally bends his mind
It's a
to the
great
point of
direction
breaking.
shot
Yeah. To
behind.
like stealing lyrics from the song. Oh my God, I was wrong. It was Earth all along.
Finally made a monkey out of me.
But it occurred to me, when I rewatched it, that the point of he's in almost not denial, but he's never comes to his mind. It's like, oh, I've come back to Earth. I'm on, and throughout the entire movie, he thinks to himself, I'm on a planet of apes. Yes, humans used to live here, but this isn't Earth. This couldn't possibly be Earth. And then even when he talks to Dr. Zaius about humans, being wiped out, in his mind, he feels like humans were too intelligent to destroy themselves. He brings up the points that, maybe a plague or some natural catastrophe or a meteor shower hit the planet, and that's what wiped out humans on the Planet of the Apes. And it isn't until he sees the Statue of Liberty, he realizes where he is, and he curses the people of the past. You blew it up, you maniacs. Damn you all to hell.
Phenomenal
Nice.
choice.
Planet of the Apes. I'm gonna have to make sure I put that on the list of movies I eventually, hopefully, watch.
Have you seen
Oh,
any
man.
of them? Did you see any of the three new ones?
I don't know. Those I've been seeking out to. Other than they're not streaming anywhere, so I'm trying to watch them in order. Because I have not. The first one came out, I was like, okay, we'll see. But then as the new trilogy grew, I read that they were actually worth seeing. So I'm
great.
very,
Yeah.
very interested in seeing those. Yeah, yeah.
But then even then you want to talk about time travel too, and you guys know, I'll just say this. The second one follows up that, but then the second one ends with a nuclear bomb, which kicks back characters back in time, which starts the third movie, which then sets off the chain of events to get to the first. The first five are phenomenal. Like as far
really
as intertwining,
Yep.
It's great.
I'm
That's
sure
a goddamn good answer. I'm bad that
I'm sure one day we'll do like our top 5 film series, and it'll appear again on that list.
Yeah.
I thought they were going to say top 5 monkey films, and I was like, okay, I guess.
Well, that's 5 right there. Those 5 movies.
Oh.
Five.
No Mighty Joe Young.
Justin
No,
checks
Mighty
in.
Joe Young. Maybe King Kong. I'll slip
Dunstan
in
checks in. Isn't that one?
Dunstan checks in.
Ed with Matt LeBlanc is the picture.
Oh,
he's
no.
not monkeying around. He's not monkeying around.
AB kicks himself. He's not monkeying around. I love it. He kicked himself out. All right, well, let's where were we? We're at Scott right now.
Yeah,
with
Scott's
his
turn anyway.
number
breeze
one
through
movie.
My number one, mind bending. It's probably not the best choice, but to me, maybe it is. Like I said, it's my favorite movie. Welcome back, Cotter. No, my number one, everyone knows who knows me. My favorite movie of all time is Memento. So with that, it's 2000s, written, directed by Christopher Nolan, based on a guy who's hunting his wife's killer with a short-term memory loss, and he can't experience new memories for over 15 minutes. And it's Guy Pearce plays Leonard. And at the time when I was going through the IMDb 250, I got to it and I watched it. And there's 2 non-linear stories. So there's stories that are scenes that are picking up in color that end and continue, and then a black and white scene, and then a color scene that begins, and then that scene ends with the start of the previous scene. And no matter what, if I put it on, I will always catch myself being engrossed and engaged in the movie. And it's probably the only movie that I can say where I won't tune out or skip, because I always try and remember what's the next scene. He's running. Oh, I'm chasing this guy. No, he's chasing me. And there's like bits of that. So then I'll be like, oh, okay, what was that next scene? Okay, that's right. He pulls up in the car and the guy shoots it. So I'm again, as I've talked about, never been put in a film more than Memento, because I'm going into my memory to remember what's happening in the movie.
Yeah.
And as throughout, he's hunting the killer. He's getting help. They're shady. Everyone has ulterior motives. And as you get to the end of the movie, which is really the middle of the movie, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I've watched that movie chronologically through. It doesn't make a great film. It doesn't end in a great spot. You don't know. But like I said, I fall eating up the gimmick of the non-linear storytelling. I like the two stories coming together. I like the direction shot that when the truck goes in black and white and comes through the barn area that you've seen, then it turns into color and you're like, oh, this is the merging of the two stories together. This makes sense. And now as you get to that twist at the end, which is again the middle of the movie, you now see the film in a completely different light. And again, it's something that, has his memory betrayed him? Has he set himself up on the wrong path? Does he care? Does he have a purpose? Does he not give a shit? There's bits of coolness. And when that music picks up at the end and it's just Guy Pearce's monologue talking about we all lie to ourselves to be happy. In your case, I'm no different. And he's driving, finishes with, again, Mike was talking about cool lines. One of my favorite finishes where it just pulls up. Now, where was I? And he goes, and then it ends. Unbelievable. So like I said, my favorite film, mind-bending, one that stays with me, one that I constantly ask, what's going on? Literally, because every scene transition, I'm going, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? My number one will always be 2000's Memento.
Yeah, Memento's just an amazing movie. Definitely like whole new, when you first time you see that, you go, whoa, nothing's ever been done like this. Like you said, the two storylines crossing. And then, and then it's still when they cross, you go, okay, well, here's where everything comes together. And then you go, I still don't know. Did he do it? Did he not do it? Is he? How many
there's
people?
There's whole Sammy Jenkins storyline.
How many people
you
has
see
he
the
killed?
shot of him in the chair. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think that was one of my first films where it's like, I had seen that, and not a lot of people that I knew had seen that, and so you got to watch this.
Upper hand.
Watch that. Watch this.
Me in high school, man.
And then sort of the concept of the dig deeper for what else has this guy made, and then watching The Following and going, oh, I love this too. And then like, okay, well, I'm gonna love everything by this guy, right?
So I feel like he might have been announced for Begins because I feel like I had seen Insomnia around the same time because that's like high school. And then I was like, oh, this movie's so rad. Like, you got to see this. I was passing along to everyone. The DVD was great. It came in the blue, and it had the doctor's notes in it.
Oh, I
lent that to everyone. Yeah. I lent that to everyone. And then it was announced Batman Begins. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
The one. Yep.
Wow.
And he got announced for Batman Begins, and I love that. That's my favorite of the three Batman films. And then I was just off to the races. That's great. Yeah, and then it's like a ink blot test when you put it in, and there's different codes for that DVD to get to different spots. Like you have to go literally like a video game, like back, up, down, and you can watch the movie chronologically on that DVD.
That's right.
Oh wow,
that's right.
It's cool. It's just awesome stuff like that. Yeah. So, my number one.
Good one. It's a good one. I don't know why that ended up being an honorable mention and not on my list. That's ridiculous. Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't make mine at all. And I love that movie.
Bet my own.
I love that movie too.
I knew Scott was gonna have it on his.
I just had Prestige.
Do you know 3? Did you know my 1 to 3?
I knew this was your one. I don't. But
okay, we'll talk after.
So my mind is bent because Andrew's supposed to be next, but do I go?
Oh yeah,
we were bending your minds. Yeah, go for it.
I'll
go.
You go.
Just because I feel like it'll hurt my head more if I don't go around the.
I'll forget to go. We'll have to finish the show early.
Okay, so this is a film for me that kind of going with films that I watched and no one else around me had, or maybe they thought it was too damn weird. This film feels like it could be a late 90s film, but it's actually an early 2000s. It's 2001's Donnie Darko. There was no way.
I was waiting for it.
There was no way it wasn't getting on my list.
I was going to be shocked if it wasn't.
Like, this was the first film where I was like, what? Like, and I literally, like, I'll rewatch. Like, and talk about time travel. Oh my gosh. Like, when Matt, you were sort of talking about Back to the Future. And I was thinking like, okay, yeah, absolutely time travel. And then I was thinking about this and how intense this one is, and how within the story he learns about it. He learns about this book that this lady wrote called The Philosophy of Time Travel. And he's supposed to be himself just sort of psychotic, and everyone writes him off as this crazy kid. But really what you find out is he's this integral part of this alternate dimension that's called the tangent universe that's occurring, and no one else is realizing it. And he's got this small window of time essentially to fix everything. Otherwise, the known world is just going to be destroyed. And like the first time I watched that, I didn't get any of that. I was just like, that rabbit's fucking creepy, like. But you watch it again and again, and you find all these hidden little things. And like my favorite part of that, actually, which you wouldn't think, was I didn't really like the Drew Barrymore scenes early on, but my favorite part was when she was reading that Graham Greene book, The Destructors, and the quote in there, "Destruction is a form of creation," and you realize that that's not in there by accident. That's sort of the whole premise of the whole movie, that he's got to sort of destroy everything in this universe so that his universe is okay, which inevitably, spoiler alert, he has to sort of end his own life to fix everybody else's. But man, is it deep, and is it confusing to people who don't pay attention to those specific things. And I feel like it was like sort of way ahead of its time. And like, for talk about early directors, I don't know if this was Richard Kelly's first. I think this might have been his first.
It is, yeah.
And it's
Yeah,
like
he only has that in Southland Tales.
Yeah, and it's like, holy crap. And talk about favorite quotes. My favorite quote in that has nothing to do with time travel, but it's the crazy gym teacher there. "I sometimes doubt your commitment to sparkle motion." That's my favorite quote of any. I just love that quote. But anyway, there's so many hidden things in that. Like, he writes the time that Frank tells him on his arm, and it's 28:06:42:12. And then I love those kinds of things in movies, because you can look that up further, and there's all these conspiracies of things being hidden in the film, like their flight number is 28:06, the parents' flight, and they're taking the red eye at midnight out of gate 42, and like, so all of those match the numbers. And the film takes place in 1988, and there's the whole time travel, 88 miles per hour, Back to the Future. Like, there's all these sort of conspiracy theories between all his numbers, and I'm just like, this is so much more mind bending behind the scenes, right? And that's what I love about it. So
that's great.
I always think of this. I always think of that movie as a reverse "It's a Wonderful Life." That Frank is like the thing from Clarence from "It's a Wonderful Life," showing him what would happen if he actually lived, as opposed to if he had never existed, right? So showing him why he needs to die rather than why he needs to live.
Right?
I
got to rewatch it. I probably will tonight, and I'm gonna go in with that like on my mind. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I think the last time I watched that, I had that thing. I'm like, holy crap, this is like If It's a Wonderful Life, but telling him he needs to die instead of he needs to be alive.
Huh. I'll have to see that again. I've only seen it once as well. So maybe I'll like it better the second time.
Oh, that's great. I love Donnie Donker.
You better. All right, AB, number one, what you got?
Okay, there was no doubt as to the gentleman that would direct the number one movie on this list for me. You guys can all probably guess who that's gonna be.
Lynch.
Yes. So the question was going to be, which of David Lynch's movies was I going to choose for this? Because pretty much, other than A Straight Story and maybe even The Elephant Man, the rest of his movies could fall into this category, and I love them all. So I decided to go with his craziest movie, which happens to be his first movie from 1977, and that is Eraserhead.
Oh, okay.
And this movie is messed up from the get-go. It is follows this guy Henry Spencer, who's in this post-apocalyptic industrial wasteland. He's with this woman, but they kind of hate each other, and she ends up having a baby with him. But it's this like mutant, like lamb fetus that just cries the entire time. And like somebody talked earlier about movies with dreams. David Lynch is known for his dream sequences in his movies, in his TV shows, Twin Peaks. And this I would describe as a full-length feature nightmare. It is just a nightmare from the word go, and it feels like like you're stuck in this nightmare world. And so I honestly, I can't really say a whole lot about it because it's pretty messed up. Like I describe it to you and it wouldn't really make any sense because it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's like it's like a nightmare. I showed it to some people the other day who liked this kind of stuff and they were weirded out. They like weird movies and they were like, this is crazy, man. But one thing I'll say though about David Lynch, this is one of the things I like about him the most, is he, from the day one, I actually watched an interview that's on this disc from '77 about the movie, and he refuses to explain anything about his movies. The people ask him like, "Well, what's this about?" No, he won't. He refuses. He'll never talk about what his movies mean. And I love that because he wants you to have your interpretation. Once he puts his interpretation out there, well, I meant to say this, and I meant to say this, and this means this.
It's
now that
over.
is canon. That's it. That's what the artist meant for it to be. There's no interpretations. He doesn't want that. He wants you to have your interpretation. What do you think this means? And he always throws it back on people. What do you think this means? What do you take from this? And he wants people to think about it. And he wants people to dive into it and dissect it. And to me, he's one of the directors that is a real true artist. That he puts so much detail into his films that you can kind of dissect and think about and ponder over. I just love him to death. So David Lynch, Razorhead. But
very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, I feel like mine pales in comparison as my number one, but definitely mind bending in itself. And I had to come down to, it might not be the most obvious, or maybe does it fit as number one among the other ones? I don't know. I just really, really enjoyed this movie. The first time I saw it, really enjoyed it. For a while, it was the one DVD that sat in the drive of my computer, and just basically I would just like, oh well, those become before streaming. I would just basically, and this is at work where I wasn't necessarily supposed to be watching movies, and I had this movie in the bottom, and one of those movies is a movie I discussed last time. True Stories was Goodfellas, and that's when I got to watch that movie and really study it. The next movie after, I decided a month and a half later I should probably switch DVDs and stop watching Goodfellas. I watched Fight Club. And I must have watched Fight Club 60, 80 times. Every day I would just hit play because it was in there. It was the only one I had. But it sounds cliche to say now because everybody likes Fight Club and like, oh, Fight Club, you get it? Tyler Durden, they're the same person. But like, what? But when it happened, you have to say it was pretty fucking impressive. Like,
oh yeah.
If you saw that coming, shut up. You're being pretentious. Like you saw that, whatever. Like that was great. And even after you see it, then it does that thing of those movies, which a lot of you guys have said that now, oh, here's the fun adventure. Now let's be detectives. Let's watch this movie and let's find the hints. Let's find the little things that make you go, hey, 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 the little flashes of frames, the little, this and that. And then when they show it to you after, it does that reveal. And I don't know, the whole thing is itself. And then it has that sort of neo-anarchist, let's burn down all the credit card companies sort of kind of thing behind it. So I don't read a lot of books. I definitely read Fight Club and a lot more Chuck Palahniuk because of it.
Because of that.
So yeah. So definitely number one mind-bending movie for me. Fight Club.
Solid pick. I love
That's
that.
great.
Love it.
Yeah, the two I was like,
man,
man, I was gonna end this being like, man, I'm shocked no one has Johnny Darko. So Mike did, and I'm glad that Fight Club made it too. It's
Nice.
my honorable, but
Absolutely.
Can I put out there along those same lines? I thought for sure someone's putting Inception on their top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put it on our
Yeah.
mention. I thought Matt for sure would have had it.
Yeah. And most of the other stuff I had written down as well. The only one that didn't make it that no one mentioned.
Nope.
And
Saving it for later.
Yeah, save that for later. It was
same movie now.
Am I back?
It was Split.
Oh yeah.
No one
So
said Split.
I
That
Split's,
I
we're
thought
gonna,
that was
Split's
going to
the-
be on Mike's.
Split's one of the only movies that I fell out of the chair. Like I went on my first date with Natalie, and she doesn't care about movies. And AB knows this. I fell out of the chair on my knees on the floor and was explaining the ending scene with Bruce to like an audience of people of like 15 people, and I'm like, guys, this is what that means.
But here's it.
So that was one where it was like I couldn't breathe after that. I was like, oh my god, I didn't know about this. It wasn't spoiled. So
Well, there you have it. Split not going to be in the quiz later on today, but the rest of these movies definitely in contention for either a question or a speed round question. Guys, great mind-bending movies. Next week, we need another theme. Who is up on the list? AB?
This guy.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so I am going to choose a genre that is near and dear to my heart. I watched a lot of these when I was a kid, and that is war movies.
Oh man.
And you can use that as broad as you want it to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be
War movies?
Yeah, war movies.
War movies?
So war, WAR. So it doesn't necessarily.
Is this entire series a practical joke on me? Or like sports movies, war movies,
Yeah, I don't watch
movies
any war films.
Francois
I'm gonna do a lot
never
of
seen.
You've never seen any war movies?
Not that I can I don't seek them
Save
out.
it. We'll find
There's
out.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm not gonna say, but there,
I got
the
a
one
lot
I'm
of
thinking
homework,
about.
too.
You could, like I said, you could take that as broad as you want to be. So, like, you can make action movies to be war movies if you want.
No. War movie. I like the. This is the challenge of this list. It not only will push me to remember those movies that I've seen, but also, add to the list of movies I should be watching. And so far, that list is growing and growing from all of these sessions where there's movies that maybe I have seen and need to rewatch or have never seen before because I never wanted to give it a chance. But through your words, I find myself going, oh, maybe I would like this movie. So hopefully that happens to everybody else, right?
For sure.
Oh, I've got 3 picked out already.
I got a lot
Already done.
I do not like war films as much. I got a lot of work to do.
All right. Well, so do
Good.
I. Let's get to it.
Yeah, you got a whole week.
Got a whole week. Thank you, everybody, for watching as well. Thank you guys for being here, the Mack Flash team, everybody. This is the Mack Flash 5, and we'll see you guys next week for more. Don't forget to watch tonight's quiz about the top 5 mindfuck movies. That's right. I said it.